Thayendanegea or Joseph Brant was a Mohawk military and political leader, based in present-day New York, who was closely associated with Great Britain during and after the American Revolution. Perhaps the Native American of his generation best known to the Americans and British. He met many of the most significant Anglo-American people of the age, including both George Washington and King George III. While not born into a hereditary leadership role within the Iroquois League, Brant rose to prominence due to his education, abilities and his connections to British officials. His sister, Molly Brant, was the consort of Sir William Johnson, the influential British Superintendent of Indian Affairs in the province of New York. During the American Revolutionary War, Brant led Mohawk and colonial loyalists against the rebels in a bitter partisan war on the New York frontier. He was accused by the Americans of committing atrocities and given the name of Monster Brant, but the accusations were argued by later historians to have been false. After the war, he relocated with most of his people to Canada to the Six Nations Reserve, where he remained a prominent leader. Early years. Joseph was born in March 1743, in the Ohio country somewhere along the Cuyahoga River. This was during the hunting season when the Mohawk traveled to the area. He was named Thayendanegea, which in the Mohawk language can mean two wagers bound together for strength, or possibly, he who places two bets. As the Mohawk were a matrilineal culture, he was born into his mother's Wolf clan. Anglican Church records at Fort Hunter, New York, noted that his parents were Christians and the names were Peter and Margaret Tehonwakwang Aarikwa. His father died when Joseph was born. After his father's death, his mother Margaret, the niece of Tiagira, a Quanawanga sachem, returned to the province of New York from Ohio with Joseph and his sister Mary. They settled in Canajoharie, a Mohawk village on the Mohawk River, where they had lived before. On September 9, 1753, his mother married again, to a widower named Brant, a Mohawk sachem. Her new husband's family had ties with the British. His grandfather Sagayendweretan was one of the four Mohawk kings to visit England in 1710. The marriage bettered Margaret's fortunes, and the family lived in the best house in Canajoharie. Her new alliance conferred little status on her children, as Mohawk titles and leadership positions descended through the female line. Kanigaradunka was a friend of William Johnson, the influential and wealthy British Superintendent for Northern Indian Affairs, who had been knighted for his service. During Johnson's frequent visits to the Mohawk, he always stayed at the Brant's house. Brant's half-sister Molly established a relationship with Johnson, who was a highly successful trader and landowner. His mansion Johnson Hall impressed the young Brant so much that he decided to stay with Molly and Johnson. Johnson took an interest in the youth and supported his English-style education, as well as introducing him to influential leaders in the New York colony. 7 Years' War on Education. Starting at about age 18 during the French and Indian War, Brant took part with Mohawk and other Iroquois allies in a number of British actions against the French in Canada. James Abercrombie's 1758 expedition via Lake George that ended in utter defeat at Fort Carillon, Johnson's 1759 Battle of Fort Niagara, and Jeffrey Amherst's 1760 expedition to Montreal via the St. Lawrence River. He was one of 182 Native American warriors awarded a silver medal from the British for his service. In 1761, Johnson arranged for 3 Mohawk, including Brant, to be educated at Eleazar Wheelock's Moore's Indian Charity School, in Connecticut. This was the forerunner of Dartmouth College, which was later established in New Hampshire. Brant studied under the guidance of Wheelock, who wrote that the youth was of a sprightly genius, a manly and gentle deportment, and of a modest, courteous and benevolent temper. Brant learned to speak, read, and write English, as well as studying other academic subjects. He met Samuel Kirkland at the school, later a missionary to Indians in western New York. In 1763, Johnson prepared for Brant to attend King's College in New York City. The outbreak of Pontiac's rebellion upset his plans, and Brant returned home to avoid hostility toward Native Americans. After Pontiac's rebellion, Johnson did not think it safe for Brant to return to King's College. In March 1764, Brant participated in one of the Iroquois war parties that attacked Lenape villages in the Susquehanna and Chemung valleys. They destroyed 3 good-sized towns, burning 130 houses and killing the cattle. No enemy warriors were seen. The Algonquin-speaking Lenape and Iroquois belonged to 2 different language families. They were traditional competitors and often warred at their frontiers. Marriages and family. On July 22, 1765, in Thayendanegea, Brant married Peggy, also known as Margaret. Said to be the daughter of Virginia planters, Peggy had been taken captive when young by Native Americans. After becoming assimilated with Midwestern Indians, she was sent to the Mohawk. They lived with his parents, who passed the house on to Brant after his stepfather's death. He also owned a large infertile farm of 80 acres near the village of Thayendanegea on the south shore of the Mohawk River. This village was also known as the Upper Mohawk Castle. Brant and Peggy raised corn, and kept cattle, sheep, horses, and hogs. He also kept a small store. Brant dressed in the English mode, wearing a suit of blue broadcloth. Peggy and Brant had 2 children together, Isaac and Christine, before Peggy died from tuberculosis in March 1771. After attacking his father in a fight, Isaac died as a young man of a wound. Brant married a second wife, Susanna, but she died near the end of 1777 during the American Revolutionary War, when they were staying at Fort Niagara. While still based at Fort Niagara, Brant started living with Catherine Aden-Wentison Crowan, whom he married in the winter of 1780. She was the daughter of Catherine, a Mohawk, and George Crowan, the prominent Irish colonist and British Indian agent, deputy to William Johnson, Superintendent of Indian Affairs for the Northern District. Through her mother, Aden-Wentison became clan mother of the Turtle Clan, the first in rank in the Mohawk Nation. The Mohawk had a matrilineal kinship system, with inheritance and descent through the maternal line. As the clan matriarch, Aden-Wentison had the birthright of naming the Tekari Hoga, the principal hereditary sachem of the Mohawk, who would come from her clan. Through his marriage to Catherine, Brant also became connected to John Smoke Johnson, a Mohawk grandson of Sir William Johnson and relative of Chief Hendrick. With Catherine Crowan, Brant had 7 children: Joseph, Jacob, John, Margaret, Catherine, Mary, and Elizabeth. Career. With Johnson's encouragement, the Mohawk named Brant as a war chief and the primary spokesman. In the spring of 1772, Brant moved to Fort Hunter to stay with the Reverend John Stewart. He became Stewart's interpreter and teacher of Mohawk, collaborating with him to translate the Anglican Catechism and the Gospel of Mark into the Mohawk language. His interest in translating Christian texts had begun during his early education. At Moore's Charity School for Indians, he did many translations. Brant became Anglican, a faith he held for the remainder of his life. Aside from being fluent in English, Brant spoke at least 3, and possibly all, of the 6 nations' Iroquoian languages. From 1766 on, he worked as an interpreter for the British Indian Department.